Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. Thank you for joining us. From the top, we are here to talk about episode 5. We got letters from millions of listeners about some of the confusion with which we released episodes. Not that there should have been, because they're all labeled in numerical order. But just so we all know, this one is episode 5. If you don't speak English, which I don't know why you're listening to us, this episode was called The Calling. So if you don't speak number English, then know by the title that this one is called The Calling.
You're not making it any more confusing. Good job.
Nope. I've done a great job communicating. Communicating is one of my love languages. So I'm very good at it. And that's why I'm always so very, very lonely. Tom, I really like this episode. I'm just going to get into it from the top.
Okay,
This one had some, I don't know, I'm never going to say this show's, spooky or, horror, but there is an element of, wait, what's going on? That's a little bit terrifying. Maybe it's just because, much like Dark, a German show, and it's just going to be terrifying one way or another. I don't know. I'm not making any quick judgments there, but the stuff that happens in this episode with the people going into the kind of trance, and just all that stuff, I really like this episode. It went in a way that I was like, oh, I'm not prepared for this. I don't know what's going on. I still don't know what's going on. But I really did enjoy and this was someone went to the directors and they were and the writers, and they're like, listen, by the time we get to episode 5, we're going to be real close to budget. And they're like, oh, do you think the extras are probably an overhead cost that we can get rid of? And they're like, that would be nice. And one of the writers is like, I got a great idea to get rid of everyone else on this ship other than the title actors. I don't know. Do you think that stuff comes into play when they make these decisions? They're like, listen, we need to thin the cast real quick. So,
well, I have questions about that, because there are multiple scenes where they show people jumping off. I'm like, man, how many people are on this boat? But
a lot less now, Tom. A lot less now. It's the response.
So true. But I'm with you. I liked it. I'll be honest, though. Once it finished, I was like, oh my gosh. There was just so much thrown at you in this episode than there has been in anything else. I'm all for throwing a little twist and throwing a little mystery, but this had so much I struggled to keep up. So I don't know. I've got a love-hate relationship, but I'm with you on the way it's shot. Those wide shots they do of everybody leaping off the boat are just intense. Some of the shots they do kind of going through the door and then going into their dream sequences and stuff, I think are super cool. So still a lot going on. Still very much enjoy the show, but it definitely picked up its pace in this episode.
Oh, I like it. I like it. They're like, listen, have you been confused? Well, guess what? We made Dark, so we're going to confuse you even more. Here it comes.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
All right, let's kick this thing off. The Calling. We wake up with no wake up. It's just Mara, and she's in the middle of nowhere, and we are going to become very familiar with this. Can we just call this the mountaintop? The mountain meadow? What do you want to call this?
It is gorgeous. Yeah, this huge open area, snow mountains in the background, and this just lone mansion in the middle of nowhere.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to be oh, I'd like to vacation there. I don't think that's the point of this. But for the sake of brevity and I like giving things code names, we're just going to call this the mountaintop. So she wakes up on the mountaintop. She's running around. We see a grave. Anytime there's a freshly dug grave, things are about to get weird. And this is a grave for someone by the name of Wake Up. Or I don't know if they do first name, last name, so Up Wake. I don't know what it is. But the person's name on the cross was Wake Up. Then we
Did it actually say that? I don't know. I must have missed that. Did it say Wake Up on the cross?
Yeah, on the cross it said Wake Up.
Oh.
Because later on, someone else approaches that same one, and there's nothing written on it. So,
okay.
Listen, if I'm wrong, no one's going to correct me because I'm infallible.
Well, let's say this at the top, because we watched this in a bunch too. So we watched 5 and 6. So we'll be recording both of them right now. Just again, heads up, we're going to try to stay away from any sort of conversation about what happened in episode 6, but we are aware. if that's a thing and you want to be able to go and listen or watch both of them and come back and binge both of these podcasts, please do so.
Okay, that's a good point. Allow me to tell you how episode 6 ends. All right. She then has a repeat of that flashback that we saw in like episode 1 of her being dragged down the hall. She's asking about her brother. She's in the insane asylum, and she gets that very gentle, sweet syringe to the neck.
Do you think this is the assumption still this is a flashback? Like some of the stuff that's kind of going on and what we know after this episode, like I almost get the thought that maybe it is a flash forward, maybe? Like, is this something like, I don't know.
So you think she is seeing what happens in the future?
Yeah, potentially. Like, because we have these things about like her dream sequence and things like that, and kind of stepping into this universe. Like, how many times has this happened to her? I don't know. It just kind of flashed in my mind watching this. It just seemed like it was different than the other flashbacks we've had.
Well, this was a repeat from the earlier one, though, right? We saw this all before.
True, but my mind is just thinking that maybe all of hers are not actual flashbacks. Like maybe hers are flash forwards. Like she's seeing it differently.
I don't think they're flash forwards because no one can see the future, Tom. So that's impossible. And this show follows strict rules about what's possible and what's not possible. So
True.
They would never do something weird or not within our reality. I think maybe I would argue this might be a false memory because she does make a comment later on about I was a doctor in a mental hospital, but my memory is of being a patient. And she makes some comment about that being changed. And man, I hope
I like
that's
that because maybe that is. I
episode.
just feel like this is like a different like vibe than the other flashbacks we've gotten from the other characters thus far.
Okay. She wakes up. She's next to Daniel. He's staring at her with those, I'm going to guess, white eyes? I don't know what his eye color is. But they're in that, like, I don't know, family meeting room, and the boy is locked in the cabinet via crowbar. And then we cut very quickly from there to Ivan leading the mutiny, and there's this discussion about how far they're going to go. And Mother Danish, who I do think we learned her name, but I'm going to continue to call her Mother Danish because it's great. She's 100%. Like, listen, sacrifices need to be made in order for us to win. Oh, because all these, like, all the crew guys are like, are we going to get in trouble when we get to America? Or, like, if we go back? And she's like, listen. And she uses a word I'm not going to use because this is a kid's podcast. But she tells them to buckle up and they're going to make sacrifices so that they can win. Mm-hmm. And then her children go off in a side room and like, listen, Mom's crazy, right? You realize that. Mom is absolutely not hearing from God, but is crazy. And by children, I mean Tove and Crester. I'm never going to get her name right, so I'm just going to say
Tove.
Tove?
This is a Tove, yeah. But yeah, I think at this point we've established that Mother Danish is spoiled. The Danish is spoiled.
The Danish is spoiled. I like it. I like
the sequence though because we get like these two siblings. Cause I don't think they've ever like had a conversation about their mom, right? And like how she's cuckoo bananas, and now they're both like kind of coming to terms with it, I guess. Or maybe it's just Tove.
Is there, I mean, the best conversations as an adult, if you have siblings, are like those times where you like turn to your sibling and you're like, do you remember when they did this? Or like, can you believe Mom or Dad just did that? Like my favorite conversations at this part in my life are like 2 drinks in being like, do you remember? Can you imagine? Like, especially now that I'm a parent. But no, you're right. We never really see them talking about it. But, and these are my other favorite conversations that siblings have, is Crester's like, hey, remember that time you murdered someone? Which, my second favorite conversations are when siblings are like, hey, remember when we murdered that guy? And then
a big twist, right? Like, I'm assuming we'll find out more about her backstory.
Well, this goes along with your like connection that you made a while ago. Is like all these people have like murdered someone prior to getting on this boat. This is a boat full of murderers, accidental or other, I don't know, manslaughterers or murderers. This is what these two ships should be named.
I got a theory that just popped in the head then. So, like, if what we get in this episode as we get into the details, like, it's a lot more, are we in a dream kind of thing, right? Like, are all these people, are they, like, tapping into these people that are in prison or in jail because they have murdered somebody in the past, and they're, like, you know, tapping into their brains because they don't have, like, any free will anymore, so they're, like, using these people as experiments to, like, bring in their subconscious into Mara's dreams? I don't know if that makes any sense in the kind of or the segment of the whole show as of this far.
So are you wondering if this is like a collective dream, and the subjects that are being submitted to this are prisoners, essentially like death row prisoners, because if it goes horribly wrong, no one cares about them? Is that your theory?
I don't know. I mean, just as you were talking about that, and that the fact that everybody on this boat seems to be a killer in some way, it just kind of popped in my head. I don't know.
I like it. I like every bit of it, and I hope it's not that, because I don't want to guess what's real yet. I want to kind of, you know, but if that's how it turns out, then yeah, you and I were both right. We both guessed exactly the same thing at the same time. So we'll both have a moment of patting each other on the back, not one person being smarter than the other, you know, nothing like that. One day I'm going to be the smart person.
The key is just to throw as many theories out as possible, and then eventually you can say, "Yep, called it."
Yeah. You're a prophet, Tom. You'd be a great prophet. In fact, it was really, really good. All right. That conversation ends with Tove taking a shotgun, and she's like, "I'm going to go do business." And we're like, okay, she killed once. She's going to go kill, I guess, twice, because it's a double-barrel shotgun. From there, we go to Clements and Lucine, and I don't know that I care about their storyline, but they have a conversation about, you know, the life he's led. I don't know. We go from there. What's important is we've got teams. We've got the captain's team, and we've got Ivan's team. Or is it Mother Danish's team? I don't know who's the captain of that team. Probably Mother Danish. But
who's Ivan? Is it Ivan or is it Franz?
Oh. Yeah, you're right. It's Franz.
Okay.
Can those be interchangeable? I think those are interchangeable if in the native tongue. Sorry. Good question. Who's Ivan?
Who's this character you just made up?
Well, I told you I'm not the smart one. You're the smart one. All right. Thanks for correcting me. We go to the captain's team. They're all hanging out. And Tove shows up, and she shows up like... She, like, comes into the room pointing the shotgun at everyone, and then she's like, "Oh, why'd you think I'm not here to help?" And they're like, "Because you were pointing that gun at us, and you came through the door like a SWAT team."
Hot.
Yeah, came in hot. Very good, yeah. Mara comes in, and she goes for the cabinet. And everyone's like, "No, don't let the boy out." And we get some bullet time here, Tom. We get someone shoots. Time stops. Did you notice who jumped to block the bullet, seemingly?
Daniel. Daniel jumped right in the way. He was going to be the savior here.
Well, he was going to look like it. There's no way he was going to get there in time. He's not that fast. But at least he could be like, "Oh, I tried." Anyways, time stops. Mara's like, "Oh, this happens to me all the time." She walks over. She plucks the bullet out of the air. That bullet would be pretty hot. And then she releases the boy. He comes out. And he's not affected by time stopping, and neither is Mara affected by time stopping. And let's discuss these things, Tom, like they are perfectly normal, and we were not thrown off by this sequence at all.
Well,
who controls the time, Tom? Who controls time?
That's a fair question. But first off, I want to say I was just super excited when this happened, because now the show is officially timey-wimey. Who actually did this? I mean, the obvious answer is the boy, right? Because he's still holding on to this pyramid that does who knows what. Or do you think it's like Mara somehow? Like she was overcome with something that she was able to stop time and like just disappear from the scene from every other character's perspective.
This is like a fear response. Like she knows she's about to get shot, so she is able to do that. the way I feel like the show is pointing us to is the boy did it with the pyramid. Because
But the
he
boy's
doesn't
still like locked up, right? Like he couldn't see it happen. Maybe you could say he heard the gunshot and then, immediately reacted, and like it's like the boy's reaction.
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean,
There's cool
she
like
seems
CGI
surprised.
going on. There's cool CGI going on, right? Like around her, it's like this aura of like, I don't know, call it time for lack of a better word. It kind of like goes all around her, and then she kind of sees the same with the bullet.
Oh, you thought that was CGI? I thought that was. I thought those were practical effects, as they say in the business. I don't know. My thought is the boy did it with the pyramid because she seems pretty surprised, and he comes out of that cabinet and is just like, "Oh, another day on the boat. Point me to the buffet table. Where's the next port of call?" I don't know. What I do know is this is when that siren starts, and they leave the room, which makes you start to wonder about all the magician shows you've ever seen where the magician is there and then they're gone. Like, do you feel like maybe this show exposed a lot of magicians' tricks?
Yeah, little boys at pyramids.
Little boys at pyramids. Doesn't sound right for some reason. Anyways, they come to the captain. I don't know how many times the captain grabs someone and shakes them and like stares into their face, but he accosts
go-to move.
Daniel. Yeah, his go-to move. We very quickly listen. I don't like picking a lot of nits with this show because it's perfect in every way, but they go from she just disappeared with the boy while we were shooting at her to the very practical. Listen, we need to figure out the coal situation. Like this kind of like they're surprised, but then very quickly they're like, "Hey, let's, we need to take care of the coal and take the ship over." Like, did you?
It
feel
was
like,
a little quick and
right?
abrupt, right?
Yeah.
Like not only did that happen, but then you've got these sirens going on. It is. What was the captain? Did he know of these sirens? Like, do they exist? These are like the ship's sirens going off if something is happening, or is this just like otherworldly? There's just sirens going on in the abyss.
I didn't feel like, because someone's like, "What was that? What is that?" So yeah, I didn't feel like these sirens were like a normal ship alarm.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the only thing I could say from to your point earlier is like, the captain probably thought about the idea of like, we're going to run out of coal and we're going to run out of it quickly. Then all this crazy stuff happens and he doesn't know how to cope with that, but he knows how, like, he at least knows logically what that next move should be, which
I thought the disappearance of Mara was so sudden. His new love was so sudden that he was like, "I'm just going to think about something practical like coal."
as one does.
But the ticking starts. And I really like
Siren
this.
stops, ticking starts.
The ticking starts. And all the extras on the show, all the ones that don't get paid for dialogue, start marching to the ticking clock like zombies. And I really like this. I was like, wait, what? What's going on? This was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
They're all like moths to the flame of the water. Like, I like the way it kind of cut. Yeah, and I like the way it kind of transitions here of like all these like extras, zombie walking down the halls doing who knows what and going who knows where. And then it kind of cuts to Crester and he's like just slowly tapping on his cross, like in the steerage area. So it's like at first I was like, oh, is Crester like controlling these people by tapping his cross? He's the one making the ticking noise. But I think we very quickly realized that that's him like falling under the spell of this tick.
Right. So I've got some questions for you as we're watching all these people walk through the hall. Mm-hmm. We don't know what time of day it is, right? We don't know. We're assuming it's daytime. We don't know if it's... Well, we see them come off the ship and it's like there's some light, right? So it's not like pitch black. Everyone's really well dressed, like super well dressed. Like by today's standards, they're going to either a wedding or a funeral. You're telling me there's not one person at this moment out of all these hundreds of thousands of people that wasn't going to the bathroom at the time? There's not one person shuffling down this hallway with their pants around their ankles, like just moving. And I watched this scene at least 18 times. I didn't see anyone mid anything embarrassing. It's like they were all ready to march to the tick of the tap.
Well, maybe that's just the ones that we saw walking down the hallway. When they do some of the wide shots of more people falling off, then maybe those were the ones that were in.
Tom, I paused and zoomed in on everybody. I didn't see any white cheeks at all. Anyways, none of the mutineers, we'll call them, for your sake, we'll call them Franz's gang. I like to call them Ivan's gang. But none of the mutineers seem to be affected. Like when they're in the room, because the people are just like walking by through the hallway. But then I think later on we do see some guys from that group start like being, because that's the thing. It like, as we find out, it's not everyone is immediate. Like some people get taken by it like later than others.
Right.
And so none of the mutineers initially seem to be taken by it. Some of the coal shovelers are. And then all these people, you've been on a cruise, Tom. Typically when you all see people like that moving in a line to somewhere, it's because it's lunchtime. Or it's the limbo competition on deck, you know?
Yeah.
Or if you go on the right cruise, it's one of those where they spray water on T-shirts to see how well the T-shirts hold up. I don't remember what the competitions are called, but it's like, you know, is fabric better? I have never understood the point of those competitions, but it's like which shirt is more waterproof, I guess. I don't know. I've never attended one, but all these people are like lined up to go to the buffet. I believe that's where they're going, right? That's the end destination of these zombies.
I think they're just going swimming. I mean, I don't know. There's that old saying, right? If somebody jumps off a boat, would you jump off with them? And apparently everybody's like, yep, sure. Seems cool.
Yep, that is the old saying. Yep.
But I do love this shot, right? Because it shows like a couple people like jump off, and then it does a wide shot of just like, I don't know, like lemmings falling off the boat and just boom, 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 hitting the water. And then, of course, the two bigger characters that we see in this initial siren call or whatever is it Lingy's mom?
Yep.
She jumps first.
She's the first one, because she turns at the railing, looks at the camera, and they're like, "Don't look at the camera," and then she turns and jumps off the boat.
But then we get Cruster, and I think Cruster and both Yingli sees her mom jump, and Cruster's dad sees him jump too. So it's like just even more brutal that their friends, family are watching them do this.
What's funny is I thought they were doing a fake out with Cruster. I thought when he like stood up and he moved in time, I was like, they're gonna have him do something to like make us realize he's not taken by it. But nope, he jumped off, and it was not all that great. But back in 1899, everyone was swimming, so I'm sure all these people will be fine. Much like Galadriel hopping off in the middle of the ocean, these guys are also hopping off. I'm sure the same thing will happen to them. Here are the shots that I thought were like actually worse than the, like not worse, but like more eerie than or eerie, I don't know, than the wide shot or like watching is the people that are below deck and you just get the shadow over the porthole.
Right.
Like, and so Lucien and Clemens, I'm assuming they're about to do marital things because they're so in love. All of a sudden they're startled because these bodies are just hitting the floor like the famous song by
POD.
Limp Bizkit. I don't know. POD is a better guess than what that was incredible. Yeah, good work. All right.
It is definitely an Irie scene, though. You're right.
So I was full of ire. Mora and the boy start writing notes because he speaks, right? He speaks, but
this sets it up. He writes a note to her, hands it to her, and says, the note says, "They are listening." And then he goes right up to her ear and whispers, "I can't tell you. You have to ask the creator," which is like, boom, big moment, right? The kid does speak. He just chooses his words carefully or knows he's being constantly watched. So you got to whisper.
Yeah. There's probably Alexas in all those rooms. Am I right, man? They're constantly listening. You know, our phones, our Alexas, Listen, if you don't think big government is out there, Tom, give me a couple of minutes. I've got some things to
Please,
say.
go for it. Let me turn my lights on.
Birds, drones, they're always listening. I think
Birds?
I've made my point.
Okay.
Speaking of birds, drones, and me making my point, the first mate, who's part of big government, you know he is. You know he's part of the system, Tom. He's one of the they that I've been telling you about. Anyways, I don't know how to recover from that, but the first mate types some code. What is the thing called? Like, what is the interface on the wall with the weird cylinders and gears that, like, eventually Daniel will go to it, the first mate goes to it. I feel like we need a name for that thing. Much like the mountaintop, what should we call it?
It's the mainframe.
Okay, the mainframe.
It's called the mainframe. Yeah, because
Okay.
it seems to, like, when they're using their, like, crazy pop-it remote control things, it seems like it controls that. Like, that is a central hub for shenanigans.
Okay. See, what I
Shenanigans
like
hub.
I like about our relationship is I set you up for, like, a joke to, like, give me a really good, like, oh, we're gonna call it the, I don't know, whatever. Who can come up with jokes on the spot? I don't know. But you, obviously being the jokester, said mainframe, which is just a killer comedy bit. So I guess we're gonna call it the mainframe.
I got to Shenanigans Hub. You just need to give me time. We're calling it the Shenanigans Hub.
I'd
Just
like
like
to
the-
call it the mainframe. Out of spite. Most of my life is lived out of spite, Tom. I'd like to just call it the mainframe now.
This is true. I know this about you.
The shenanigan hub. All right. So he typed some stuff into the shenanigan hub. And in my notes, I wrote nothing seems to change. But I think I typed too quickly because I think something does happen, right?
I don't know if anything does really. You just kind of hear noises. It almost sounds like it's powering back up to do something. I'm not sure. I think we probably get a better sense toward the end of the episode what it is. But right at this moment, it just kind of sounds like it's powering it up.
Right. We then go to the two groups meeting in the hallway. So family meeting, but not in the main family meeting area. This is in the hallway. And there's some comedy in the fact that these two groups are like about to get into an argument with all these zombies walking by. Like, and you're like trying to like yell at someone, but someone's like breaking your eye line. Like they could have had some, like you point at someone and you accidentally poke a zombie in the side of the face, but they like keep moving by. They're like, everyone's jumping overboard. And so, yeah, it's tough to also like bring up old grudges when this newfound zombie lemming suicide is happening. So pretty quickly, they're like, let's all work together.
I just couldn't get over how many passengers there were. I think they do like another wide shot here, show more people jumping off. It seems like they're just constant. And this is not that big of a ship. This is no Titanic.
Sure. I think this is as big as the Titanic. I think.
Titanic was 1912, man.
I mean, the
It's 12 years
Titanic's
later.
not very big now, but when it was floating, when it
Too
was
soon.
above the surface,
It's too soon, man.
Too soon. I had a thing to say about the amount of passengers, and it was, I think what we have here is budgetary reasons. They've got stock footage. Somewhere they went in the archives, they found stock footage of people throwing themselves off an ocean liner, and they're just like, listen, we're not going to shoot the shot for the show, so let's just this, I don't know, drone shot from the late 1800s when a bunch of people jumped off an ocean liner. Let's just roll that B footage over and over again. Save some. I'm about budget saving, Oleg and Ying and Ling Yi meet. And I'm always, how are these two communicating, Tom? I know love is a universal language. Don't tell me about love being a universal language and how love is all you need. Don't quote Corinthians at me, Tom. Just how are these two talking? Explain this to me, because they're not speaking the same language.
It's love, Julian. There's no other fathomable, reasonable explanation outside of love. This show makes more sense than them talking does.
The show makes more sense than them talking. Them understanding each other. Oh man, that's great.
I do think they're probably doing like enough like body language kind of stuff, so you can probably get some of what they're saying. And I don't think, at least in this sequence, they're not having full-on conversations. It's kind of more just like, I don't know, quick and easy things.
Oh, I think Oleg and Ling Yi are doing full-on body language. I don't think there's no two ways about it. I think they're speaking the universal language,
Of love. Yes, you're right. You're right. See,
love.
You got there. It took you a while. You got there.
Yeah, I did get there. Hopefully they get there. The boy takes Mara down the hatch, which I
think
just
as
love
he's
that
going
sentence.
down, he tells her, like, don't be afraid, which I thought was kind of interesting. Again, we're getting more talking from the boy. So now kind of anything he says, I'm very interested in it.
Okay, he says, don't be afraid. Sure. But I'd still be afraid. So joke's on him. We use, as normal people do, a beetle to open a panel in a wall.
Yep, Ringo pulls out his drumsticks, goes, and then door opens.
Okay. I will be referring to the beetle as Ringo for now on, or Rango, the much beloved cartoon that I've never seen because it was weird. I watched the first 5 minutes of it. I didn't understand it. So Mara travels through the hatch. We're back at the mountaintop. There's a grave, and I wrote palace, but we find out later it's that mental hospital asylum that's just very lovely. Daniel, I think, shows up at this point, and he's very upset that the boy took her down there, and so then he goes to the portal. And I think one thing the show does that is a little bit confusing is it keeps like thinking that Daniel and the boy are not aligned, like not allies, but then every time they meet, it's like, hey bro, you good? Yeah, I'm good. You good? And like that, I mean, once again, that's essentially the dialogue, but I don't know, that I just remember being thrown off here because I was like, oh, the boy did something that Daniel didn't want him to do, but then when they meet, they're seem to be working towards the same end, right? They're working together.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like they're going at it from different directions, but I think their goals are the same.
Got it.
But I love this visual that we get here too, right? Where they go out of the hole or whatever, the portal, if you will, and then when it cuts and shows them walking out of the portal, and you just see this black square on the black background and just all snowy mountains or anything behind. It's just super, super cool looking. I love it every time they do it.
Yeah. I always think to myself, what if I ran into that in the wild? Like, what would I do? Like, say I was riding through the West Pasture, and all of a sudden I came upon a giant black hole in the ground. Like, what would be my first thing that I would do? I would probably take a shovel full of dirt, throw it in there, and then I'd throw the shovel in there, and then I'd jump in there. Those are the things that I would do. So if I ran into a square on a mountaintop, I'd throw a rock through it, and then I'd get mad and I'd jump through it, because that's what a normal, rational person would do. Royal. Anyways, the boy and Daniel have a conversation.
And they're kind of doing this over the grave, right? I think the boy is literally looking at the cross that's on this freshly dug grave.
Yeah, I'm confused by these two's motivation, but the conversation is like, Daniel's like, it knows we're here now, and the boy's like, we've never made it this far, maybe it'll work this time. She didn't remember, and Daniel's like, he won't find you. And so I feel like, are we in like, and maybe I'm just thinking of this because it's kind of a popular like video game trend right now, but are we in like a time loop? Did you get the sense that when he says we've never gotten this far before, did you feel like events were happening over and over again?
Absolutely.
And Dark has some of this too. For those of you that don't know, and you're joining us on episode 5 for no reason, these guys also created Dark, which is a timey-wimey show. But anyways, the like things repeating themselves and like happening in different ways, or like kind of a time loop situation. I feel like Dark was a little bit, but this is what I got when he's like, we've never made it this far before. That's kind of how I felt Was I wrong in
I don't
feeling that, Tom?
no.
Tell me how I should
I
have
don't
felt.
I don't think there's any other way you can take this. Like the idea that they've done this multiple times. I think that's what we're supposed to take from this. But the way like Daniel, I think he like holds his shoulder and reassures him when he says like, "Hey, I've got to go make sure they don't sink the ship. You stay here. Don't worry, he won't find you." It almost made me think of more of a father-son type of relationship. So I feel like I'm leaning more towards, Daniel potentially being the father of the boy.
Sure. I don't know that I got the father-son vibe. I got more of a Jack and Diane type vibe,
Jack and Diane or Sam and Diane? I think last time you said Jack and Diane. That's the song. Sam and Diane is Cheers.
Like
a
I
little
said,
ditty
Tom,
about Jack and Diane.
one day I'm going to be the smart one on this podcast. The day's not today. It's probably not going to be tomorrow. But one day when you're gone and I'm alone here, I'll be the smart guy.
I'm your North Star.
You are my North Star. Anyways, we cut, and I don't know that we've really seen these guys most of the episode, but Angel and Ramiro. Angel seems to be having a very bad reaction to all the craziness that's happening on this ship. He is not handling it very well, which is understandable. I think Angel's reaction is probably the most normal reaction for this situation.
Agreed.
Jerome runs into Clements and Lucien's room and immediately starts tying them up. Once again, I think he does it at gunpoint. Once again, this is a situation where if characters would communicate, it would seem a little less weird, but this is a TV show, so he's like, listen, I'm doing this for you, to protect you, and so they start tying themselves to things, and then we cut to the Danish folk tying themselves up, and this is then where we see Mother Danish seems to have caught the zombie bug, so she is now trying to march off of the ship, but the nice thing about this is if you tie yourself to something, you can't get away. I do want to say we didn't talk about this, but there was a scene when they're in the hallway and they are physically trying to restrain these people from walking. And it felt like the zombies all of a sudden had like superhuman strength, or these people weren't trying very hard to like restrain the zombies from walking. Because it feels like if you wanted to be super mean, you could just start kicking the legs out from under all these people, which would have been a hilarious scene. Like when someone's walking and you kick one leg so that they cross ankles and like trip, when you did that to your friends because you're normal. If like they were just running through the hallway, kicking the ankles of all these people as they walked, that would have been hilarious.
It would have been more funny instead of Jerome going in and like tying them to beds. He just tied all their shoelaces together.
Oh yeah, that would have been great. Or tie them like arm in arm, but they're facing different directions, so they just all walk in a circle. They're just spiraling. Anyways, we get another sink the ship message. And I think, Tom, we talked about this. Is like the message was they thought sink Prometheus, but really the message is, hey, sink the ship you're on because bad things are going to happen.
Yep.
We get the scene where Daniel's trying to fix I'm sorry, Tom, give me the name again. The shenanigans machine.
I've already forgot.
The shenanigans.
We'll get there.
Well, yeah, eventually. Anyways, trying to fix the shenanigans mainframe, and this coal worker this guy, I mean, I'd hire this guy right now. He is just diligently shoveling coal while everyone else walked away. He's like, I guess I'll keep the engine running. But then he does beat Daniel over the back with a shovel several times, and apparently Daniel has a spine of, I don't know, anamantium. I don't know what the right special metal is. That's the one. Thanks, nerd. Because he takes like 4 shovels in the back and keeps on moving. He has a flashlight. The guy's like, what's that? I was like, oh, yeah, flashlights didn't exist. This was kind of interesting. This is where, not that we didn't know before, but you're kind of like, okay, there are 2 timelines happening here.
Mm-hmm. He kind of Daniel kind of pulls out his little, poppet machine thing, and that kind of seemingly shuts the dude down, right? Like, is this the same thing he did to Ada and all the other people that like mysteriously died in the beginning? Like he just hit some buttons on this and like killed them with it? Or is this a different thing, him shutting these people down?
No, this is, we see the first mate do it as well at certain times. But yeah, this is, they did it to Switch in the Matrix. Yeah, they're just like
they're
pulling the plug. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. But this does make me think, and the way they positioned this earlier, that Daniel might be a futuristic werewolf, right? Because this guy was very afraid of werewolves, or was it the other guy?
Oh, no. Well, he says, what's his name was right. You're not getting me, wolf. And then he starts hitting him with a shovel. So it's not off the table, Tom. It's not off the table. And I think it's just going to take the love of Bella in order to, make him human again. I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing genres.
Are you Team Jacob or Team Edward?
I just want everyone to have fun. So I guess that's my answer. We then have Mara, and she's wandering through the asylum. She walks into the room that's marked 1011, and there's a chair. Looks like a very comfy chair. And then the father shows up. And this actor's in other things, and I'm trying to remember what I know him from, but he is recognizable. He is very creepy. So he's father, and he's like, where did you hide it? And she starts to ask about her brother, and her brother, who I thought was named Henry, her brother, who I thought was codenamed Hermano, is really named Kyrian? Is that right?
I think so, yeah. Syrian.
And I'm assuming he's going to be played by the guy from Tiki Blinders, or whatever, the Peaky Blinders. That's
Cillian
the one.
Murphy, maybe.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's going to play the brother. I don't know why my brain went there, but what's happening on this ship? Well, I don't understand what's happening on this ship. She asked what's happening on this ship. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think she's kind of asking the questions, and the father, which is certainly a big revelation here, because we've seen this guy before in these flashbacks, and now that we're knowing it's the father, I think I almost missed this on the first go round, because she quickly sees him and says, "Oh, father." But yeah, I think she's asking questions about what's going on the ship, and he specifically says, like, you're asking the wrong questions, which again, love it. Super weird, cryptic, whatever craziness. And then she wakes back up on the bed, so kind of like resets her, if you will. But obviously doesn't reset everything, right? Because the ship is still where the ship is. It's not resetting to episode 1. Right. But I have to ask you, they had mentioned like the idea of the creator. We haven't seen any other kind of like high level figure outside of this guy. Do we think this guy is like the creator as well?
I mean, ultimately God's the creator, Tom. But I guess if you're asking me based on the show, yeah, this is the guy that I assume, based on his futuristic spacesuit later on. Yeah, I'm assuming he's the creator. I do like the response of "you're asking the wrong questions." I'm gonna start using that more just in daily life. When people are like, "Hey man, how you doing?" I'm gonna be like, "You're asking the wrong questions."
That'd be great.
And this is how you lose friends, you know? Asking the wrong questions and telling people they're asking the wrong questions. Wide shot, a lot of people still jumping off this ship, Tom.
So many people.
I appreciate that they don't mob the railing. They go one at a time. They're like, there's an order. There's a line to this.
This isn't World War Z.
Actually, that is a good comparison. It was kind of, the way this is filmed does look like that show. Captain Larson runs into Mara. He's like, what is going on? And we find out that she is Mara Singleton. Her father is Henry. And she feels like this ship has been set up so that he can study the passengers, because he is very curious about human behavior. And so, yeah. Oh, we also find that her letter is addressed to Henry, which you blew my mind with, but it doesn't really matter because It's so my mind is no longer blown, Tom. I take back my mind blown because it was addressed to her because her middle name is Henrietta because she was named after her father, Henry. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, right when this happened, I'm like, oh, swing and a miss. And I was so bummed. I thought it was clever.
I mean, I think the show was trying to do what you caught on to. Mm-hmm. So I think you were still right. My dumb brain, this was like, oh yeah. I was like, all right, this makes sense. Her name was
always her.
It was always her. My big dumb brain. The brother is still missing though, which we're saddened by. And then she uses the beetle.
Mm-hmm.
Ringo. And Captain Larson follows. And then, so I believe they go through the hatch in his room, right? Because this one leads to the woods. The hatch in her room leads to the mountaintop. The hatch in his room leads to the woods, which is where his trauma is. His, for lack of a better word, burnt family house.
Yes, I think you are right. I don't know if that is exactly how it works. Like, do the hatches just take you down to a specific, another world, or can that hatch take you anywhere? Like, if you had this beetle and Mora used the beetle in his room, would that take it still to, Mora's dream sequence area? Or
well,
what?
She uses it, and so I believe that it's based on what room you're in. And all of the stuff, as we find out later, is contained within the ship, so it doesn't really matter. It's just a really big ship that has asylums and mountaintops, and anyways, I've gotten too far ahead. They're in the woods by Captain Larson's burnt out house. House is still burnt. We cut from there, and the first mate, who is the gentleman with the beard, I don't know his name, but he is the first mate. He then kills the budget Adam Driver actor with the mustache.
Okay, I like it.
And he uses it with the poppet control.
Yes.
The Adam Driver comment is based on my wife going, doesn't that guy look like Adam Driver? Several times. So I'll give her all the credit.
This show would be so lucky.
This show would be so lucky. Adam Driver would be like, I only speak English. What are you guys all...
You're fine. You can just say whatever you want, buddy.
Yeah, we don't, languages don't matter here. Go talk to Ling Yi or Oleg. And then he does some other stuff, right? He's using the poppet to do some crazy things.
I don't know if he does much here. He just kind of uses the poppet to kind of again, essentially kill this guy if it's the same thing that kind of Daniel was doing, because we do find out that this is... I actually take that back. This is where we find out that he is a puppet, right? This is the first time we see that he also has this fancy little machine. It's not just Daniel that has it.
We saw him work with the shenanigans machine, and we've seen him do the code, the arrow code. Up, down,
Contra code.
Whatever. Yeah. So, but yeah.
So we know he's in on it, but yeah, this is the first time we find out he's got a fancy poppet controller.
Yeah, fancy poppet controller. All the kids are asking for him for Christmas. Or
an FPC.
Wait, what?
He's got an FPC, fancy poppet controller.
Oh, okay, got it. Oh man, I hate when you do that. All right. Mara thinks it's a dream.
Mm-hmm. And I think she says she thinks she's discovered the truth before, and this is where we again kind of get that idea of this is going on over and over again, and maybe she's being drugged to forget what truth she found, and she has no idea what she did find.
Right. And they discuss how can any of this be real, and Captain Larson's like, hey, I've got something to tell you. I was also on the Prometheus, apparently, based on the logbook. Mm-hmm. And so they high five, and they're like, Prometheus forever. And they do the the twisting fist bump thing. Anyways, Daniel stops the ticking by using, I'm assuming, the shenanigans machine. There's a lot of untying that goes on because everyone at the same time had the same thought of let us tie ourselves to the backside of this so that when they open the Ark of the Covenant, we won't melt. Mrs. Wilson, lucky Mrs. Wilson. Is it Miss Wilson or is it Mrs. Wilson? Is there a Mr. Wilson, Tom?
I don't know. I mean, it's the neighbor from Home Improvement, right?
Sure. Okay. So we're not going to see his face. But she stops at the edge and she says something like, I felt like I was having a dream. And everyone's like, all right, well, we're going to move on from that. Not really ask any more questions. And they all look around and they go, hey, we're all salaried employees for this production. All the extras are gone. And then they get a sink ship message. And Daniel, who is a bright bulb, is like, oh, I think they mean sink us at this point, which is great. Cue some sort of music drop. Every one of these episodes ends with, I want to know what their music drop budget was, because there is not, I'm not a big, like, I don't know a lot of popular music from, I don't know, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2030s. I don't know any of it. Just because I was deprived of it. But I feel like I recognize every song the show has dropped at the end of an episode. And so take us through the needle drop. What is revealed? What blows our mind at the end of this episode, Tom?
So we get a handful of things, right? So we get the first mate is the one. Is it the first mate that actually comes in and delivers this message to him? Or no, I take that back. It's another like random guy that delivers this message to Morrow's father, who's
dressed
the creator,
like he's part of the First Order of the Star Wars, I believe, is what they're called.
So this is like kind of the confirmation earlier when the first mate was kind of typing his up-down arrow code that he was actually sending a message to this guy. So like that is a telegraph to him, and it has like Project Cerberus listed on this little telegraph that he gets. He mentions the father kind of says like he wants the boy. There isn't much time. The father kind of like then stares out his window from his little office, which the office seems to be kind of more in modern times, right? There's like electricity and phones. You see the TVs buttons and stuff on the wall, buttons. Everybody knows buttons weren't invented until 1902.
That's right.
This is 1899.
Yep.
But yeah, looks out the window and sees the massive pyramid outside. So super crazy, super weird. We thought the pyramid was just going to be a small little thing the boy was carrying around, but no. Father's got a bigger size pyramid.
Sure. Was this a nice office, Tom? Do you think this guy's like, is he like top end corporate, or is this like he's middle management trying to move his way up? What did you think? Was this guy?
He's working his way to the top of that pyramid, so he's middle management right now.
Oh, he's like, we don't have much more time. I'm never gonna get that promotion, and then I'm not gonna be able to afford the swimming pool, and my kids are gonna hate me. This guy's the last true family man. I think they call him Clark. I think Clark Griswold's his name. Anyways, yeah, I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so there's multiple timelines. This guy, like, they made it like futuristic, but like not modern futuristic. I feel like this is like Star Trek, but like original Star Trek TV show futuristic. Because you're like, oh, it's just a lot of lit up buttons and like high collared jackets with buttons. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it supposed to be like 40s, 50s, 60s kind of thing? Something in that area. Like it's not modern time for sure.
Sure. Yeah, they haven't gotten to flying cars like we have in the 2050s. I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, but it's 2050 and we have flying cars. Yeah, so this one ended. I was like, all right, I appreciate them throwing this at me. I know that they're not gonna like give me a quick answer, but I'm curious. As I said at the top, I just appreciated this episode for like the weirdness of let's just have everyone be controlled by some sort of weird mind thing and jump off the boat. And yeah, to your point or my point, I don't know. If this is a shared dream and like to get people out of the way in order to focus on the main characters, for Mrs. Wilson to be like, oh, I just had the strangest dream, like it would make sense for me that in order to get their like consciousness out of this world or out of this dream, that they would have a dream and like it's all like happening inside of a mind, if that makes sense. I'm sure it doesn't because the show doesn't make sense, but I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And so yeah.
Yeah, I don't get, whatever this overarching mystery, like, is at the very end, we're going to have a shot that, like, pans out, and it's all of them connected to some sort of, like, mega mainframe. like mega shenanigans mainframe that has them all kind of connected in, and like, are these people still alive? Are they just brains that they're being tested on and stuff like that? Like, this is why it's fun, because I think there's so much stuff to theory craft and kind of mess around with, and we could probably watch the show 10 different times and catch a little bit more each time, or think about things from a different perspective. Yeah, I mean, my only gripe with this episode was there was just so much thrown on us. I liked the pacing of some of the earlier ones where they give us some twists, but it's more character focused and not, like so much mystery that gets thrown at us. But I'm still here. I'm still enjoying it. It's like you mentioned in the beginning, it's made by the guys from Dark, so Dark is not a show that holds your hand. You gotta keep up to their pace. So I'm willing to try.
Wonderful. Well, let's move on to episode 6, which is called The Pyramid. Thank you for hanging out with us during these trying times being 1899. If you have questions or confusions for us, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Twitter is still a thing, so you can hit us up at
Team Binge or Team Binge Podcast, Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what you think. Like I said, we haven't finished it all, so no spoilers, but if you're at where we are, let us know where you're at.
I have 2 big asks for our audience. One is, I don't know how Twitter works, but our Twitter is all like Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings stuff right now, which I don't mind the Lord of the Rings stuff. The Rings of Power stuff, do whatever it is that you people do to change our algorithm. So is that within their power in order to make sure I don't have to look at Rings of Power stuff?
Well, it's because when we were doing the Rings of Power, I heavily tweeted and socialed and all that kind of stuff. So that's why so much of our stuff on our feed is that.
Okay.
I would have to do that to 1899, and I don't want to do that because stuff's going to get spoiled.
I want all 1899 stuff. So if you are, I don't know, I'm assuming Tom Twitter is the owner of Twitter. I don't know who owns Twitter. But please change our algorithm so it's only stuff about 1899. It doesn't even have to be about the show. If it's just about the year 1899. We learned a lot of cool facts in episode 1, which we got a lot of letters about. Apparently, I was wrong on a number of things. But history is what you want it to be, so it doesn't matter. It's not written in stone. All right, I've been Julian.
And I've been Tom. Till next time, everybody.